Right. I'm calling this meeting to order. This is a workshop for the,
Sorry.
it's okay. We have two exciting topics that we're going to cover today. The first one is we're joined by Metro to talk about potential transportation transit options for Scarborough. And we have GPCOG here to talk about Vision Zero. Vision Zero was something that the council set as a goal that we wanted to support in terms of a potential resolution. So we wanted to learn more before we move that forward. And we've been talking so much about transit, especially in the transportation committee. It's really exciting to hear from Metro what some of the options might look like. Before we dig in, I figured we could go around and just do introductions, and then I guess we'll pass it off to Metro first to give us an update. So why don't you start, Councilor Cushing, and we'll go around.
That's me, Glenn Cushing. Nice to meet you.
Yep. John Anderson, Vice Chair.
Paul, Town Manager. Corey Fellows, Town Council.
Bill Donovan, Town Council.
Rick Harbison, planner at GPCOG.
Lucy Sinclair, mapping and data analyst at GPCOG.
Ed Suslovic, Metro's board president.
Glenn Fenton, Metro Executive Director.
Angela Blanchett, Town Engineer.
Jen Ladd, I'm the chair of our transportation committee.
Great, thanks. And we'll just pass it off to you, Ed and Glenn, and we're excited to learn a little bit more about transportation options in Scarborough.
Great, thank you. Good, okay. All right, well, thanks so much for having us tonight. There's a lot to cover, and I'm really happy to spend some time with you on this and to answer any questions that we can. So first, just a little bit of background on Metro. Metro was formed in 1966. We're the largest of 6 public transit agencies in our region. We have 8 member municipalities, 2 of which joined last year. So just last year, we had the town of Gorham and South Portland joined Metro in 2024. Board of Directors is 19 members with members from all of the communities that are represented on our board. Our service area, we have 13 routes that run in those 8 communities that I mentioned. We also have one route, 24A and B, which just touches Scarborough on Gallery Boulevard over by Walmart. We also have one on-demand microtransit zone in Falmouth. I'll get into that in a little more detail. Last year, we had just over 1.8 million rides on our service. We have about 50 buses, a mix of diesel, natural gas, and a couple of electric buses, and just over 100 employees work for Metro. A little bit, this is a 20-year look back on our ridership trends. As you can see, we've, prior to the pandemic, done a really good job of increasing ridership, especially in the last 10 years or so. We did that through a lot of strategic partnerships, past programs with universities, schools, and have been able to really leverage those to grow ridership. And like most transit agencies, we experienced a major dip in ridership during the pandemic. But I'm happy to say that last year we were recovered to about between 85 and 90% of pre-pandemic ridership. And we expect to continue to see that trend of improvement in 2025. One of the projects that I'm really excited about that's on the horizon for us is rapid transit. For those of you who don't know what bus rapid transit is, bus rapid transit is a different way of providing transit than fixed route transit, which is what you commonly see here in our region. Rapid transit can have separate lanes for buses, which allows them to be faster than cars in many ways and makes using the bus or public transit in general just much more competitive than it is as when you have buses out in mixed use traffic with the other cars. It offers other advantages like stations that are think of more like a light rail or a train station, more established location. There's technology on the buses that can allow them to get through intersections quicker. Again, just really trying to speed up the trip for riders. And this is really, we think, a game changer for getting folks on the bus. There was a GPCOG study that identified several corridors in our region that would be suitable for rapid transit. The first one that we will be exploring, or that we're actually working on conceptual design on now, is the corridor between Gorham, Westbrook, and Portland. But I just wanted to highlight that one of the corridors that was noted was the corridor here between Saco, Biddeford, and Scarborough, and South Portland into Portland. So Rapid transit is something that I think, again, could be a game changer for our region, and I wanted to make sure to highlight that. So a little bit about the existing conditions for public transit here in Scarborough. As you hopefully know or may not know, there's currently one regional route that runs through Scarborough on Route 1. That's the Route 60 that's operated by Biddeford Saco Old Orchard Beach Transit. And as I mentioned earlier, the Route 24, which just kind of touches Scarborough over by Walmart, are the two fixed route bus services that you currently have. Next slide, thank you. So on the 24, that runs about every hour, 7 days a week. And again, just serving that Walmart area of Scarborough. The Route 60 on Route 1 runs about every 2.5 hours. It does operate 7 days a week, and it connects, again, Biddeford, Saco, and comes through Scarborough on its way to South Portland and Portland. On the current service on Route 1, that operates about every 2.5 hours. That type of frequency we call lifeline frequency. When you have buses that run very infrequently, typically the only folks that are on them are folks that don't have any other means of transportation. They're taking it because this is their lifeline, their only way to get out. It's been proven that frequency has a direct impact or a relationship on ridership. So the more frequent buses are, the more people ride buses. As you can imagine, you can use your car anytime you want. If you could only use your car every 2.5 hours, it wouldn't be very useful to you. So similarly, the Route 60 is a little bit limited in its utility. One thing to keep in mind with that route is that it is a regional route, so it serves a purpose of connecting, again, Biddeford Saco region with Portland, in addition to providing some service here in Scarborough. And one of the other limitations is, of course, that it only serves Route 1. And you have some folks that are within walking distance of that area, but again, a lot of that space is commercial space. So it's doing probably a better job of serving your commercial businesses along Route 1 than it is maybe local residents. A little bit on just the areas that it catches. So there are about 3,100 residents that live within a 1/4 mile of a bus stop, and about 3,400 jobs are within that same zone along Route 1. Again, and you'll hear me talk more about this when we talk about microtransit, but one of the limitations is the ability for folks to get to the actual bus stop. We call that first mile, last mile in public transit. This can be a major contributor to folks not riding. They just can't find a way to get out to the bus stop. And you can imagine, especially in the winter, that becomes an even harder task. So that's one of the limitations of the current system. There is also, it's sort of illustrated here in this photo, and I know you had your workshop last night, which is fantastic. There are some areas on Route 1 where there's limited pedestrian infrastructure. And again, that'll impact the ability to build ridership. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the opportunities. One of the first opportunities, one of the things that I think sort of sparked this conversation was the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, South Portland joined Metro last year, and their routes actually hadn't been reviewed in quite some time. And so one of the things that we talked about with their council when they joined was the possibility of reviewing their routes and providing recommendations. And that's something we'll be doing in 2025. As part of a large public involvement process where we'll go out and really look at their routes and make recommendations for possible changes. Being directly adjacent, it makes sense. It's a great time for us to look at Scarborough as well, because we know people travel regionally, right? Municipal boundaries don't really impact folks' travel very much. Unfortunately, sometimes they can affect their options as it relates to public transit. And so this is a good opportunity now as we look at South Portland to also look at Scarborough. I should also mention that Scarborough Downs was identified as a primary transit center in the Transit Tomorrow study that was conducted by GPCOG. We have met with Scarborough Downs, and there's interest there in getting additional bus service into the Downs. So that's also an opportunity. And then lastly, Maine Health's campus, we've gotten repeated requests for service to the Maine Health campus. We have an existing pass program with Maine Med. And so all of their employees are currently riding Metro, just flashing their IDs, and Maine Med is paying for those. We think that increased service there could lead to increased ridership and a way to get additional revenue to help offset any cost of operating the service. Other opportunities, we see Scarborough as largely an untapped market for public transit. We know there are more development planned in Scarborough, and we hope that work with Scarborough to make sure that's transit-oriented developments that work well with transit, that have good access to public transit. We've also heard that there's a lot of demand from seniors and passengers or folks with limited mobility to get out. And this is, as we talk about the options here, you'll see there are a lot of solutions we think we could offer those folks. And then again, as density builds, the town becomes more and more, it's more advantageous for a fixed route service. These two graphics are meant to illustrate the connections that are made, or the travel patterns between Scarborough and neighboring communities. In the circular one on the left, you'll see the yellow is the Scarborough area, and you can see that the primary areas that it connects with are, not surprisingly, Portland Peninsula, as many communities are. Also, there's a lot of folks making trips back and forth to South Portland, and the yellow that just stays within are trips inside of Scarborough. Those are really interesting to us too, because again, those are folks that may just be needing a local trip that could possibly be served by a fixed route bus or by a microtransit vehicle. Other considerations, of course, when we're looking at route planning, we're always looking at density. Again, especially as it pertains to fixed route. This graphic just shows your density in terms of population density. You can see again, a lot of it is along Route 1. I will just mention this data is a little bit old. This is from 2020. So you notice that the sector that has the downs in it does not, isn't dark. It hasn't been updated with the new populations that are living in that area. Next slide, please. Similarly, you see that senior populations are still along that corridor. And again, I believe that one zone is a little underrepresented, but you can see that there is a density along Route 1 that could support public transit.
That is the area that has the little deviation.
Yes, and so that little deviation is the Route 60, which goes in there now. Yes, the current route that comes through does go through and deviate into the Downs. I should point that out. We'd also look, of course, at job centers. Not surprisingly, you have a lot of job centers that are located in the upper left quadrant where most of your commercial district is. So that would be an area that, again, is conducive to public transit. I'm not going to be able to read this on there. So out of the Transit Together study, most recent GPCOG study, there was a recommendation on Scarborough, and I just state it here for the record because I think it's really important. This was an exhaustive study. Transit service in Scarborough is currently limited. What does exist is mainly focused on regional connections along Route 1 and I-95 corridor, and not internal travel within Scarborough. There is demand for local circulation both within and between Scarborough and South Portland. I think that's very telling, and it's actually kind of a good starting point for a discussion about what service might look like here in Scarborough. So before I get into that, we'll go into microtransit. So on microtransit, for those of you who aren't familiar with microtransit is a shared technology-based transportation service, which is on demand. It uses smaller vehicles like vans typically. And so riders can call in advance and schedule, or they can schedule at the time they need service. It's based in an app, but we do accommodate phone calls in. So we have a mix of folks. Some folks are not as comfortable with the app, so they can call in and use customer service to schedule a trip. I would describe it as similar to Uber, but a little bit different in the sense that trips can be grouped. And so if you have multiple folks calling in, and this is where the service becomes more efficient, the system will route the vehicle to the next trip, and you might end up with 2 or 3 or 4 people in a trip, and then it'll make, again, efficient routing for dropping off. And I'll show you an example of that here in a second. One of the things, well, there are several things that microtransit accomplishes, but the biggest one that I mentioned earlier is filling that gap in hard to reach areas that don't have great pedestrian infrastructure, areas that aren't easy to serve with traditional fixed route buses. That first mile, last mile connection is very important. So microtransit could do a lot of things. It can go into neighborhoods and bring folks out to fixed route bus stops where they can connect with the entire service. And for us, that runs all the way, to Brunswick, to Gorham, throughout our whole service area. Or it can just help them complete local trips. So that could mean just running to their local pharmacy, picking up their prescription and then going home. So it's great in that way that it can be efficient and be used for both purposes. We could go to the next slide. So earlier this year, actually, right at the end of last year, we launched our first microtransit district in Falmouth as a pilot project. It operates 7 days a week. And if you look at the zone there, that red highlighted area is the zone in which it operates. The orange dotted line there, that was existing service on our Route 7. It was relatively infrequent and it was very poorly used. Not a lot of ridership in that area. And again, probably in part for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, it wasn't frequent. And when vehicles aren't frequent, it doesn't become a regular part of someone's travel patterns to take something like that. So we eliminated that earlier this year and replaced it with a microtransit overlay. And so that microtransit district covers far more riders. The walking distances have been drastically reduced because, again, this is able to go into the neighborhoods and get closer to where folks are riding. And it only took us one vehicle to do that. And so we are actually, the net effect was we moved the service that we were operating in that neighborhood. And I'm sorry, the fixed route service was replaced with microtransit for almost a 1-for-1 replacement. Go to the next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, this is an example. I think this is a real trip that actually we pulled as an example that happened where we had 3 service requests in relatively quick order. And the algorithm, and please don't ask me how that part works, but the technology part picked up the 3 requests and routed the driver to those locations, told them where to pick up. And then it dropped off the riders in the most efficient way possible. Probably the way that one of us might do it if we were out shuttling around some friends. So it didn't take the first rider all the way over to their destination, which in this map was number 6. It picked up riders 1, 2, and 3, and then it dropped off rider 3, and then rider 2, and then rider 1. Although rider 1 had a longer ride, we were able to accomplish all those trips with 1 vehicle and be more efficient in the way that we deployed, as opposed to having, a single. And this is where it differs from an Uber or a Lyft, which is, a single ride.
And in this example, it's 40 minutes for the longest.
Yes,
rider.
the longest rider was 40 minutes and the shortest rider was 6 minutes. So the things to consider when setting up a micro transit zone, it needs to be understood that it's not meant to replace fixed route service. Okay, fixed route service is for the majority of your denser areas where you have a lot of folks traveling through. It's not a replacement for that. It would be very inefficient to do it and much more expensive to have a bunch of these vans running around. So you still want to funnel riders to your fixed route service for those regular trips that are along those corridors. The zone size is very important because, Tom mentioned the time on a trip. Your travel time and your wait time is determined by how many vehicles are in each zone. So if you have a really large zone and you just have 1 vehicle floating around and it takes 20 minutes just to drive across the zone, and then you have, of course, response time in there, you're going to find wait times to be very long. So you have to right size your zone. Fortunately, the system that we have tells us as we add space or add square miles to our zone, how many vehicles are recommended and what your average response time will be in there. So that's a delicate balance there. We have virtual stops, which we assign in the zone that make for short walks for folks. Just to be clear, it's not meant to be door-to-door service. We do offer door-to-door paratransit service that comes complimentary with the fixed route service that's required. So within 3/4 of a fixed route bus stop, we're required to provide ADA paratransit service. So that service goes door to door for folks who really can't walk a short distance down the street. But for this is really designed to have a virtual stop. So that might be at the end of someone's street, but it's not going to be a great distance. I think most of our walking distances for our virtual stops in this Falmouth zone are under 0.2 of a mile. And we've had situations where a rider has called us and said, the app says I have to walk all the way over here. I just live here. And we've been able to add virtual stops and be really responsive. It's a very adaptable system. I think that's the majority of the highlights on microtransit. So switching this to what it might look like here in Scarborough, as far as fixed route transit goes, we've identified essentially 3 primary corridors that could be evaluated. I've talked a lot about Route 1, what's going on there. I think it's pretty easy to see why that could be a good corridor for fixed transit. Payne Road is another one that could be looked at. There is a bit of a gap there in that Mussey Road to Costco area where there's some dead space and it would be relatively inefficient in there. And we'd want to weigh that as we bring forward any recommendations. And then you could at least investigate the possibility of Gorham or Black Point Road service. There's a little bit less infrastructure on that road in terms of sidewalks. So it would be a little harder to launch, but it might be worth at least looking at as an alternative. As far as microtransit zone goes, this is just kind of a draft concept of what a microtransit zone might look like in Scarborough and South Portland. Again, as I mentioned earlier, our efforts here, our planning efforts would include South Portland, and you'd want to have those locations connected. Again, not having municipal boundaries cause people to have to take multiple vehicles. You go to the next slide. So in the microtransit zone here, I think we have about 9,000 residents. It covers the higher density part of Scarborough. It would provide direct connections, as I mentioned, within that zone. And there's a possibility for adding connections to places like Main Mall and the Jetport. We'd have to be cautious about that because, again, we already serve those with fixed route buses, and we don't want to get in a situation where the microtransit vehicle is doing trips that could be or should be accomplished with a fixed route bus. So we would look at that carefully, but it is something that we would want to consider depending on what the demand is. We also noted that there's an option for seasonal service, possibly to beaches. And we would probably, that type of service we imagine would only be in demand in the summer. I should just mention, as we look through these slides, I should have said this at the beginning, this is just concept, this is just discussion at Metro. This is not a study, this is, we're here to talk, gauge interest, and then if we were to make recommendations, they would be based on a robust public involvement process, a data-driven process, not just our own work in our planning department. But these are concepts just to give you a visual so you have something to think about. Next slide, please. So again, as I mentioned, yeah, the population within the microtransit zone, about 9,600, in about 11,000 jobs in that zone. That's in Scarborough only. If you add South Portland, it's significantly more. And then in the fixed route zone in Scarborough, 3,100 population and about 2,600 jobs in that. And that's 2020 data again. So cost, diving in right into cost and what this looks like. So operating cost on the fixed route side of this, we tried to provide a range here. Again, these numbers are really based mostly off of can you go back a couple slides? This one here. So this is what we used as an example. We should just want to be clear that it's just so we could get some numbers and provide you with an estimate. The service could look very different based on the input and the data that we get from the public and from survey. So based on that, that configuration, we calculated that the fixed route service could range between about $970,000 and $1.3 million annually to operate. And the range there is based mostly on frequency. The two primary driving factors on cost of operating fixed route transit are span of service. So when does it start in the morning? How late does it run at night? What days of the week does it operate? And then frequency, how often does it run? Because of course that could mean instead of one bus, you have two buses on the road. So those are the two main drivers. So we tried to take a look here. I think this estimate is based on between 30 and 60-minute service is roughly the range here in the frequency, and it is set up for 7-day-a-week service. So that's what we're using for our cost estimate. We have a standing request right now in for discretionary funding from our region for about $600,000 to help with the cost of that. There's a chance that can get reduced based on what our actual federal apportionment gets. We haven't gotten our federal apportionment yet for this year. We're in talks with Maine DOT about a discretionary request from them. We estimate that range to request to be between $325,000 and $240,000. We estimate first year fair revenue to be about 10% recovery on this. That's low. I think that's a very conservative estimate. System-wide, our fair recovery is between 18 and 20%, but keep in mind that's for a mature route. So this, in the first year, I think 10% is a very safe estimate. That leaves the remaining local expense at about $231,000 on the high end, $108,000 on the low end. For Metro, our member communities pay for their service using a cost allocation model that is based specifically on how much service is operated in each community. So we calculate the total number of revenue hours, and then we actually divide that by each community. Some routes may go through 3 different communities, and we apportion it to each community. In this case, in this example case, we calculate that about 40% of the service for this route would be within Scarborough. So we take those local costs and we reduce them, and that puts it to about between $43,000 and $92,000 for the Scarborough portion. We think there's ample opportunity for private developer support. I think, again, a conservative number of $5,000. We think that we could see growing that number significantly as development continues, to have developers, especially developers that are directly adjacent and are going to benefit from this service, contribute to the annual operating expense. Metro is on a calendar year budget. So I know you're in budget season now. So for your purposes, for your 25-6 budget, you would be paying for, and we were estimating that the soonest we could launch this type of service would be the 1st of next year. You'd be paying for 6 months of service. So essentially a half year apportionment for that first year. We think the range of that price would be between $19,000 and $43,000, with the full year cost being between $38,000 and $87,500. That's on the fixed route side of things. And go to the next slide. Go through the microtransit service. Microtransit cost estimate between $450,000 and $600,000. We have, again, a federal request in there for support of about $248,000, between $248,000 and $292,000 is our estimate. On the side of microtransit, we would be asking Maine DOT to support the request for the capital to purchase vehicles. We think it's 2, possibly 3 microtransit vehicles. So we'd be requesting that from Maine DOT, not operating assistance. Fair revenue recovery will be lower on microtransit just because of the number of rides. Again, that's going to range between about $22,000 and $30,000, leaving the local contribution to be between $178,000 and $277,000 annually. With that service, we estimate about half of the service to be in Scarborough and half to be in South Portland. So slicing those numbers in half puts you at about $89,000 on the low and $138,000 on the high. We're not sure there'd be support from private developers on this because, again, this is a route that's it's not a route, right? It's going into neighborhoods and it's not maybe directly serving businesses. It doesn't mean we can't pursue local support from private enterprise, but in this estimate, we didn't include it. Again, there's that 6-month split. So first year cost between $44,000 and $69,000, with full year cost for microtransit between $89,000 and $138,000. If we move to the last slide or the next slide, we provided a 3-year look ahead, or maybe call it a 2.5-year look ahead would be more accurate. So for the first half of next year, the ranges are the total between microtransit and the fixed route is $63,000 on the low and $113,000 on the high. The following year, for a full year, we estimate that to be between $140,000 and $248,000, with the for the 27-28 year being between $147,000 and $261,000. I will note that those out years, all of these years, are assuming that we get these discretionary funding sources approved. We have had discussions with them. I feel positive about them, but all of the numbers are hinging on a lot of state and federal support. So next steps, we're here today. Obviously, we know you won't take action today, but we wanted to discuss this with you all and answer your questions. We're happy to come back if there are more questions in a regular meeting. So we'll seek guidance from you all and support. If there is support here and from Metro's Board of Directors, then we would move forward with confirming that that discretionary funding from the state and the federal funding that we need. And then we'd launch right into collecting data and the heavy work of the planning that would be conducted this summer, where we'd be doing a lot of public meetings, both here and in South Portland. We'd be doing survey work, gathering a lot more what we call origin and destination study, where we are studying exactly where people are traveling and just getting the details of where people need to go. From there, we'll refine the concepts you've seen today into some more specific recommendations and come back with those. Then we would need in the fall to procure microtransit vehicles. Lead time on those is between 90 and 120 days. We would present our final recommendations in the fall, both to the council and to the public. And then we'd work on siting bus stops and plan to launch in early 2026, should everything go as planned. I think that's everything I have. I hope I didn't go too quickly, but we have a little time for questions.
Great. Thank you, Glenn.
The only thing I would add is picture those, all of our vehicles, buses and the microtransit van have bicycle racks. In Scarborough, at least in the summer, we'd probably have to add surfboard racks.
All right, any questions for the Metro team? I have questions. Okay, go ahead, Bill.
Parking, obviously, the people who are riding the buses have to get to the bus stops and they're not necessarily within walking distance of that. Where do they park?
Well, so we're hoping that they'd use the microtransit vehicle if they're within the zone, right? If they're not within the zone, then we can work to develop parking ride locations. I know.
So is that something that is, when you have these, not the micro, but the other
Fixed route?
fixed routes, do you have parking lots, or do you take into account the siting of the pickup near public parking?
So we do have public, in our current system, we have park and ride lots on certain routes, and we could work with, we'd love to work with Scarborough on that. If that's something that the town would support, we would be really interested in that, because it's a great way to drive ridership. We do really well on park and rides. We have park and rides in Yarmouth, Brunswick. We serve one in Portland. So we have a few different park and ride lots, and we'd like to expand them, but we'd need a partnership on that.
Yeah, okay.
I would also put out that sometimes private businesses that have underutilized parking lots, that have surplus parking, they may want to allow Metro people to park there because it may drive business for them.
Yeah.
That's another possibility sometimes.
And that's sometimes a better use of space, right? If you have parking lot, rather than building another parking lot, if there are underutilized parking lots, we'd rather partner with private businesses in the way that Ed said, and explain to them the advantages of saying, well, if you have this and you have even a restaurant or a grocer or any type of store, you're going to be more inclined to, use that business if you park there already.
What's been your feedback from the newest members of this organization as to their satisfaction with?
Sure, I'll let Ed field.
Yeah, it's been very gratifying. First of all, Metro is a voluntary organization. No one has to join Metro. And so when I joined the board of Metro consisted of Portland and Westbrook. That was it. And since then, we've grown from 2 communities to the 8. I would say, don't take our word for it. I would encourage you, honestly, to talk to town councilors in the other 8-member communities, and especially South Portland, which just joined, and Gorham, which just joined, and ask them, are they satisfied? Are they satisfied with the service? Are they satisfied with the value of what they're getting for their dollars? And are they satisfied with the governance? I will say that the Metro board is the best board I've ever had the pleasure of serving on. Folks come in, they clearly, each community appoints their representative. So if you were to join the Metro, this council would have to decide who's going to represent Scarborough on the Metro board. And those folks come together. We understand that everything we do, it's got to work both for each individual community, but it's also got to work for the region as a whole. And if we accomplish that, then the whole thing seems to work. So I would encourage you, and you could have your manager talk to the other managers as well. And I'm very proud of the fact that Metro is a voluntary, no one has to join it, but those that have, I feel very confident that when you talk to them, they'd say they're satisfied with the value, but they also feel very good about the governance. It's a very collaborative board.
I will say I talked to Gorham counselors about this and they say it's great. Because you guys recently added a line in Gorham, right? You
Yep,
just
the
mentioned
Husky
it.
line.
So they're very pleased with it.
I noticed that the conceptual plan for Scarborough does not extend basically southward beyond the marsh. So has there been any consideration given to the Dunstan area, the intersection with Pine Point and Broad Turn? There's, as you probably know, there's the multifamily housing down there now. There's a rather large proposal that's a project that's being proposed now, and it's one of our multiple kind of town centers that we have, which is one of the challenges with planning and providing services in Scarborough, that we have these sort of multiple nodes.
Right.
I'd be curious whether that's been explored.
It is on our list. I think for this purpose, we were really trying hard to get some numbers in front of you because we knew there was interest in that. So we tried to come up with a starting point for discussion. I think everything is on the table. Should we proceed? That a study would include the entire town. So we would do a full town survey, more public meetings, again, much like the one I think you had here last night. So we really want to get folks out and understand where travel patterns are. Really, a lot of it has to do with where how much, if we're over the critical mass to make the additional, worthwhile, that's what becomes the decision point. And there's also trade-offs with travel time. So not to go too deep down the rabbit hole of transit planning, but typically Metro and Metro has really worked hard at this the last few years. And I think that the results are in our ridership. We have focused at staying on the main arteries, improving frequency, and making being as direct and quick, making the service fast for folks. We try not to have routes deviate all across towns because it becomes very slow. And again, to ask someone to get out of their car to take a trip that now takes them 2 or 3 times as much is difficult. So, but the balance typically becomes with planning public transit is a balance between coverage and frequency. We can cover the whole town, we just won't come very often, and so it'll be a trade-off, and there'll be a decision point there. Again, should we move forward?
I would also just add too that oftentimes it helps to think about this as an evolutionary process, that we start off with one scope of service, and as the support builds in the community, as ridership grows in the community, and as development occurs in the community, we then add on an appropriate basis. And so don't think of it as, okay, if we sign up for this is what it's going to be forever. It's going to evolve, and it has to be a planning process with the town, with Metro, and with the development that is occurring.
Right, and I understand that there's kind of a tipping point there, particularly in a community that doesn't have a tradition of public transit, where if it's perceived to be slow, you're not going to get enough buy-in, and you'll have trouble reaching that critical mass. And another question quickly, you mentioned the on the cost side of things, sort of private developer contributions, or however you want to characterize it. In your experience, how much of that tends to come from employers versus maybe multifamily owners, or is it something else, some combination?
Typically, we've been having more luck with employers than housing. That's where we've been, but that's not to say it can't. It's just to say that's where we've had the most success. And also we've had a lot of success with institutions. We get direct support payments from USM for their service to Gorham. And so, I think it can come from a variety of places, but I think the important thing is to just make sure that when you're developing a service, it meets their needs. And if it does, they're typically willing, and they see it as a way to sell, right?
Right.
The other thing that I don't want to get too deep into here because it's a whole discussion unto itself, but is of course TIF districts and what you all can do to fund transit at little or no cost to you by using TIF districts, which we have several communities that are doing.
I would point to Westbrook as a good example of very creative and very efficient use of a TIF district to fund a significant expansion of their metro service.
And Falmouth.
And Falmouth.
I would just add, if we do move it forward in conversations with this, I think it would be great to have Sedco at the table, as well as Maine Health and the Downs with the giant campus over there, and knowing you guys are a partner of theirs. Like, I feel like it would be nice to have them put some skin in the game. So I think
Definitely.
we want some of these bigger,
Absolutely.
groups that would benefit from this to be a part of this discussion, I think, as we move it forward. Any other questions on this side? Counselor Cushing?
Just as I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about the things that I read about, Waymo, for example, automated car in San Diego and San Francisco. I have friends that use them and they're wonderful. They get in them and they take them where they want to go. And I'm trying to envision at a younger time when I lived in West Scarborough and I worked on Sewell Street. And I'm trying to imagine how, it was 20 minutes and I had a parking space. So I'm trying to imagine when I think about who's going to use this service, I find it hard to wrap my head around overcoming that sort of American independent spirit combined with, I guess, the practical convenience of the thing. So my question is, how do you plan to do that? And I guess the secondary question is, I just looked, a way that I could imagine myself using it is if it was as convenient as Uber. So tonight Uber is $18 from here to Longfellow Square, and they'll be here in 6 minutes. And a question I have about that is that Uber and Lyft are existing transportation services which serve, they provide sort of a gig economy, all of that type of thing. And a vast portion of the ridership, I'm assuming, of the buses are people who in an income slot where they can't afford a car, they don't want one and so forth. Why wouldn't you just subsidize Uber to some extent? And have you thought about that?
Yeah, great question. To the first part of your question, we're not going to get everyone out of their cars. That's not our goal. That's not what we exist for. We exist to do a couple of things. One is to make it easier for folks that either, for a variety of reasons, either cannot drive because of physical limitations, economic reasons, whatever the case might be, to give them opportunities to get to jobs, opportunities to get to healthcare, to grocery shop, et cetera. That is a vital part of our public service. The other is we have to operate in a way that makes us more and more competitive with both single occupancy vehicle use and private ride sharing services. Private ride-sharing services have sprung up and obviously fill a niche market. However, there's several things about them that one is cost and the variable nature of the cost. Metro Connect, our ride-share, the price doesn't go up and down depending upon the time of day or depending upon the demand. It's something you can count on. I would also say that there is a safety factor. Some folks have told me that they like the fact that a public ride-sharing service, Metro Connect, it is, say our drivers are, vetted, there's no concern about who's showing up and in what vehicle, and you expect me to get in that car and whatnot. So there are some distinguishing characteristics of the publicly operated ride-sharing service known as microtransit, or in our case, Metro Connects. And I think that the other thing is who's using it. What we're finding already in Falmouth is it's not just seniors, my demographic, it's high school students, because they're finding the parents love it because they don't have to pick the kid up and take them down to the Starbucks so they can hang out with their friends. They can use Metro Connect to go from the Falmouth High School right to the Starbucks or wherever they want. I shouldn't mention any individual, we're not endorsing any businesses here. So it's a variety of folks that use that. And I think that Scarborough lends itself very nicely to that service, because there's folks that want to get within Scarborough, they want to get to the library. They want to get to the grocery store. They want to get to the pharmacy. They want to get to various cultural events. And then, God knows, in the summer, they want to get to the beach. And we know that parking is limited at your beaches. And so I don't think you're gonna build a parking garage at any of the beaches. So, again, Metro Connect could really fill that niche. And I was not joking when I said picture surfboard racks on the Metro Connect vehicles. I actually think we probably need them here in Scarborough. So I think it's a variety of folks that will find this service. Not everyone is gonna use it. And that's, if that's the goal, then we're not the right people. Does that answer your question?
Just a follow-up, in terms of cost for the microtransit, at least what you're doing in Falmouth, what is the fare?
It's $2, $1 for a senior.
So just to build on some of this, like I see the age-friendly committee in the back and our senior programmer in the back, and I know this is an area of big interest for at least that group that represents our senior community to get to the library. So I think there is some demand today for this type of service that certain groups are looking for. So I think that's great. We were joined by the Maine Agency on Aging as well at the Transportation Committee, also kind of promoting the need for this, especially as our population is aging. You know, using this type of service would likely be a benefit to many people. I think in Scarborough about our focus on the environment, climate change, traffic. You know, one way to get traffic moving better is to have less cars on the road and more people on public transit. So that's something we've always talked about at the Transportation Committee, but we've never really had an opportunity to have this conversation, which I know Jen is probably super excited that we're here doing this. So I'm supportive of this. My question is, you know, what does the commitment look like? Like you kind of gave us the annual cost, but if the town moves forward, is it like a 3-year commitment, a 5-year commitment? Can we pilot something, see what it's like, and then maybe decide it's not for us? I'm just curious, like, if we commit, what is the minimum commitment we have to give to make it work for Metro as well?
Signed in blood.
Signed in
So
blood
that-
by Tom Hall.
Well, first off, you know, we wouldn't ask for any commitment based on, you know,
Yeah.
this. We'd have a proposal. This is how much service you're going to get. This is what the state's putting up. This is what, you know, federal funding we're bringing to the table. That would all be, of course, in any agreement. As Ed mentioned, Metro is a voluntary membership organization. So in theory, you could join for 1 year. We have done pilots. We did pilot in Gorham. We piloted in Yarmouth, Freeport. So pilot is an option if you didn't want to become a member community in your first year. You say, we want to just buy service. That can't be indefinite, but we could set up, you know, a couple of years of piloting as a, you know, dip your toe in the water. And that has been how most communities have done that. I will say all of the communities that have piloted have joined. So, but again, that's, you know, the only commitment or the only thing by joining, the two differences of joining is if you join, then as Ed said, you have board representation. So you vote on the budget, you vote on policy changes, you have a seat at the table. If you buy service as a pilot, you'll be involved and you'll have complete control over what goes on in Scarborough. And that will be where it ends. You know, the rest of the organization will be run by the board. The other side of it is if you join Metro, the only hook is any long-term debt that your community is on the board for, you're responsible for your portion of that debt. So if you're a voting community and you approve a bond that we take out to say purchase a vehicle or something like that, then you decide to leave in 2 years, whatever is remaining, again, proportionalized of that. So if Scarborough makes up 5% of our service, you would be responsible for 5% depreciated of that.
Just want to have it, but communities, when a community joins, they are not if they were to leave, they are not responsible for what would be their share of any of the debt that exists prior to their joining.
Yes.
So any of the debt that Metro already has for vehicles and whatnot, when a community joins, it's only moving forward.
Do you survey the member communities to see what level of satisfaction they have?
We do a customer survey, we're a rider survey, I should say. So we do a rider survey every 2 years. Actually, this is a year when we'll be doing a survey. And I'm happy to share the results of our last survey.
I think that'd be
Yeah,
appropriate.
we can share.
Glenn, I'll make sure it gets.
Okay.
And to the member communities, in a sense, we survey them at a minimum, once every year, because our requirement is that we prepare, our budget year is January 1 to December 31st. In the fall, we are required to produce a preliminary budget with each individual community's local share. So we, I believe it's October 1st. October 1st, we send a letter out to every single member community saying, this is our proposed organization-wide budget for the next year, and this is your portion of that, based upon the formula. We said how much service you have, revenue hours, subtracted, and we take it, the fares that we collect in your town get credited to your town. That goes, and the town has 1 month. They can, if they object, then there's a whole process, an appeals process and everything and stuff. And if not, then at the end of that month, if no one has objected, we then have the budget approved. We can't change that town's assessment. The bottom line of the budget, it may change, when we finally get health insurance, but we cannot change the individual town's assessment. Does that?
Yeah. Have communities withdrawn from the program?
South Portland withdrew from Metro 42 years ago, and they just rejoined. To my knowledge, I can't think of, as I said, it started off when I was on the board. It was Portland and Westbrook. Falmouth joined with the Route 7, and then Yarmouth and Freeport joined with the Breeze service, and then Brunswick joined to go even further, and then Gorham joined with the Husky line, and then South Portland. And we're actually in active, very active conversations with the city of Bath and BIW, because they would very much like to have the Breeze service extended so that especially the shipyard workers would be able to take the bus to go to work.
Have characteristics of the town influenced the level of success that you've perceived? Are there things about some towns that make them more likely to appreciate this service?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we talked about a lot of the things. It's some of it's just having some pedestrian side, infrastructure there, so you can land bus stops and people can get to bus stops. Density is the biggest thing that's going to drive it. If there are a lot of people working and living within a quarter mile of the bus stop, that's a recipe for success. Those are the things that we've seen. But also, as Ed mentioned about our board members, and I think we've seen the communities in which we operate are very supportive of public transit. They're helping us promote it. And if they're supportive and they're pushing it, and they're representative of their community, then it's successful.
Yeah, just two things. I wouldn't want to be sitting here a year ago because we hadn't tested microtransit yet. Because frankly, I think microtransit has huge potential for Scarborough. Because of the way Scarborough is laid out, the density, the demographics, everything. I think Scarborough is an ideal location for microtransit. So the second point, I would encourage you to, again, talk to your colleagues in Falmouth, because Metro didn't come in and do microtransit to Falmouth. Falmouth, the town of Falmouth and Metro worked together to develop a better plan than what we were running, frankly, mainly empty buses around part of Route 7. And so we said, there's got to be a better way. So we did it together. And that's I think that's a reason why not since 42 years ago has any town left Metro.
I'm going to say something, and I'm going to look at Karen Martin to shake her head if I'm correct in the back, but I believe in Scarborough, we're seeing the trend is more people are living and working in Scarborough. Yep. Which is a really exciting thing to see, that I think, again, just gives us an inclination that the time is coming for something like this. So I think that's great. Before we move on to GP Cog to talk about Vision Zero, I want to see if Angela or Jen had any thoughts or comments that they wanted to share.
I have just a couple of comments, I guess. Had some questions, but one of them was around transit eligible TIFs. So I think that's something that I'm unclear on. So curious to know more about that, if that's an option for us. Just a point of note, I know that there's just a couple of groups that I know of, at least anecdotally, that are sort of running their own mini transit services in town. And so I wonder if there could be some outreach to those organizations in terms of buy-in to a program like this, because it could potentially be duplicative or benefiting those populations as well. just a big old hypothetical question about just what else we could do on our side of things to continue to support transit-oriented development here, both from a development in the traditional standpoint, but also an infrastructure standpoint. And I know Glenn mentioned a couple of things. Sections, making sure we have continuous sidewalks and accessible ramps, and particularly for any service that would focus on our arterials here, which, let's be honest, that's probably really a lot of Route 1, making sure that we have safe and functioning crossing so that people could get from one stop to another or to their park and ride if they parked on the other side, things like that. And a lot of that I know that we're working on, but I think this is just like another great example and reason we should continue to do that. Somewhat to that end, actually today I received an email from Mike Tremblay, who came to the Transportation Committee and talked about a lot of this with us previously. He reached out to me in response to the public meeting actually that we had here last night for the Reimagining Route 1 project, and provided some really great and really specific comments about types of improvements along the Route 1 corridor that would go a long way to support future bus service. And so I am interested in that, both from the Transportation Committee side, and it is also my company that is doing some work on that. So we'll make sure that those comments get incorporated into those outcomes, which will then be returned to the town towards the end of the summer and fall, which actually sounds like probably some good timing in general. And I think lastly, just an overall larger thought about, I think we could do a little bit more digging or talking about something that you pointed out, John, which is just like, what types of traffic benefits would we, it is not a secret that this is a hot topic for everyone. It comes up in all of our committees, all the meetings, and even in casual conversations, I know. But, I think this is, like Ed mentioned, this isn't the end all be all. Not everyone's not going to sell their cars tomorrow if we sign on to bus service, but what sort of benefit could we expect from that standpoint? And I'll leave you with a personal example to answer Councilor Cushing's question about who would use this service. And I can't help but think I'm probably a great candidate myself. I work several days a week on the peninsula in Portland, and currently I drive because I'm usually rushing to pick up kids after work or come to a meeting here or something like that on a schedule of my own doing. But if the parking situation on that end of it becomes much more difficult than it already is, this option is incredibly viable for me or somebody like me, in which case I don't have to drive. I could also read a book on the bus on my way to work, or something like that. So, I think that's just another example of, we could go out for dinner maybe on the bus and come back and not have to park in Portland, or go to some other areas. So I think these are really exciting opportunities. Thank you for coming and bringing this presentation. And I look forward to following along with the rest of the conversation that the council has on this.
Anything, Angela, you want to add?
I guess I want to make sure we have time for Vision Zero. I guess she touched on a lot of the things that I had kind of scribbled down. I think for staff, it's really looking at, I think Coria brought up, looking at that transit oriented development is really what we're starting to see more and more, and what can we do through the planning process and through engineering, and as it comes through planning board. I think that's really key, is, as Ed said, it's kind of having that partnership that we can kind of play off each other and figure out what direction we go with things. I think would be really important, and looking forward to that. Yeah.
So on the council side, is there general interest in continuing the conversation on this?
So, I'm gonna come in at, we've got to cut the budget some way, we have to cut the budget, and if we keep adding and adding and adding expenses, I don't think I would be. It sounds like a good idea, but it's just the idea of, the town does enough now, we're spending enough money now, we have to trim what we're doing now.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
That's fair. But I'm seeing at least a general Let's keep it going.
Maybe the good news is I won't be here to vote, but I'm not, I would need to see more information that would compel me around the demographics that would broaden it from being essentially a social welfare program, which is not a bad thing. But if that's what it is, we should call it that. And if there is a plan to get to the gens of the world and so forth, who really can use it in the way you described, then I would have to hear a much more definitive plan for how you're going to achieve that result. And I guess the last thing I would say is that I wish your vision was bigger. I think that by the time you get here, technology may jump over you. And so I'll sort of leave you with that. I think it's commendable that you're doing it. And my last comment would be that one of the biggest things that a transit system could do is revive the streetcar in Portland so that you could come to the edge of Portland and have a transit loop in there that would allow you to get close, get on a reliable circuit, which would unify Commercial Street, Forest Avenue, the West End, and so on and so forth. To me, that would be visionary, dating back to 1850.
So I'm sensing though, general, like, let's keep the conversation going, see where things go, keep the budget in mind, get some more information, and I think it would be good to just keep the conversation going. Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much
Thank you
for your
very much.
time.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So turning over to Rick for GP Cog.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I think we have the same plan. It looks like you've got copies of our.
Thank you, Lucy.
It's a little different, but mostly the same.
Is it? Why don't you jump in, just we're already short.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having us. Appreciate the town's interest in Vision Zero. Our thought tonight was to briefly go through the basics of what Vision Zero is, talk about our Vision Zero action plan, and then take a look at some of the considerations that might be on your plate if you were to adopt a Vision Zero goal. So just briefly, what is Vision Zero? This is a definition from the Vision Zero Network, which is a really great resource for learning about Vision Zero and then also for learning about what other communities are doing as well. At its core, it's a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries. It began in Sweden in the 1990s. It proved successful there. It's since spread across Europe. It's gaining a lot of traction in the US as well. Just to give you a sense of how well it's worked, in Sweden, they were able to cut their traffic deaths by more than a half. So they were, in the 90s, it was more than 500. Currently, they're down to less than 200 per year. And that's a very hard thing to do. Outside of like big improvements to vehicles like airbags and things like that, like just doing it with a safety campaign like Vision Zero is really impressive. And one of the, I guess, several of the reasons why it's so successful is that the focus is not necessarily on safety awareness campaigns, public service announcements, or even looking at where all crashes are happening. The priorities are really looking at improving road design, lowering speeds, focusing on the vulnerable user, and then also like looking at the locations where serious injuries and deaths are happening rather than all the locations where there might be fender benders and things like that. And just a big picture, Vision Zero, it's really meant to be, it's not just a target, it's meant to be a culture shift. So this is a common graphic that's used to illustrate the differences between our traditional approach to traffic safety and what is now the Vision Zero approach. So on the left is the traditional approach. Traditional approaches, traffic deaths are seen as inevitable. It's kind of the price we pay for being able to get around. Whereas with Vision Zero, it's really, this is the main one, that traffic deaths are preventable. It's not something that that we just accept that happens all the time, but there are things that we can do to prevent traffic deaths. Traditional approach relies on perfect human behavior. Vision Zero acknowledges that humans make mistakes. We need to design our roads in a way that accommodates those mistakes. Traditional approaches to prevent all collisions, so looking at anywhere there's collisions. Vision Zero really focuses the effort to where are the fatal and severe crashes happening, and let's focus our limited resources and time and energy on those spots. Traditional approach is really about individual responsibility. So if there's a crash, it's typically, driver A's fault, driver B's fault, someone is at fault. Vision Zero really takes a systems approach, like a holistic approach to it. Yes, maybe there was a driver error, but maybe the road was also not designed properly. Maybe there wasn't enough street lighting. Maybe the speed limit was too high. All of the variety of reasons. Maybe the car manufacturers have designed cars that are unsafe. So really takes a holistic perspective. And then lastly, traditional approach, saving lives is expensive. Vision Zero obviously takes the approach that saving lives is not expensive. It's a worthwhile investment. So the US DOT, they have adopted Vision Zero. In practice, they call it the safe system approach. And so this is their graphic that they use to kind of describe their framework. On the outside of the ring are 6 principles. Probably hard to read, but death and serious injury is unacceptable. Humans make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. These are all very similar to the Vision Zero approaches I just showed in the last slide. And then there's 5 elements on the inside, and these are all identifying specific crash risks. So having safe vehicles, safer speeds, safer roads, better response, post-crash care, safer road users. The idea is that if we can improve in all those 5 areas, then we can eventually get to zero. So US DOT, they have put quite a bit of money into Safe Streets for All. This program was part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. $5 billion in funding over 5 years. So far, about $2.9 billion has been spent in the first 3 years. 1,600 communities have received funding. As a result of that, 77% of the nation's population is either covered by a Vision Zero action plan or lives in an area where there's one in development or a Vision Zero project in the works. And then there's also a new notice of funding opportunity that was released earlier this month for a round 4 of this grant. And there's a June 26th deadline for submitting applications to that. Just to give you a snapshot of how Vision Zero is being adopted in Maine. So GPCOG, our Vision Zero action plan, covers the 30 communities that are part of GPCOG and PACS. Our kind of sister agency to the south, CACS, they have developed a Vision Zero action plan for 8 communities. So Cary, York, Berwick, communities in that area. BACS is the Bangor area transportation system. So Bangor and the 11 communities around Bangor are covered by action plans. Lewiston, Auburn, Sanford, Pittsfield, and Bar Harbor. So now shifting gears here, you might be interested in seeing some of the data, how many people are affected by crashes, both in the country and in Scarborough. Across the country, it's a really big problem. Compare Sweden of 500 deaths. We have 42,000 people that die each year in the US. About 160 people die each year in Maine. And then in Scarborough, it's about 2 people that die each year. And then this is just some data that we pulled for the last 10 years. If you were to average the last 5 years, an average of 2 people have been killed in crashes in Scarborough a year. The last 2 years were 3. This is looking at deaths and serious injuries in the same graph. Same calculation. If you just look at the average of the last 5 years, about 12 people are seriously injured in crashes each year. Severe injury, these are fractures, severe lacerations, traumatic brain injuries, internal organ damage, severe burns, spinal injuries. So these are like life-altering injuries. And then just to give you a sense of how big the problem is, this is just looking at all crashes. So deaths, serious injuries, minor injuries, property crash, property damage crashes, all of it. An average of 3,400 people are involved in a crash each year in Scarborough that required a police response. And they are everywhere. This is a screenshot of Maine DOT's public map viewer. And you can see this is the crashes over the last 10 years. I mean, it's hard to kind of make out the boundaries of Scarborough. One of the challenges, as I mentioned earlier, is like really figuring out where to focus your efforts, because there are, everywhere you look, there most likely has been a crash in the last 10 years. Lucy's going to talk a little bit more about that coming up. In terms of what is a Vision Zero action plan, at a really high level, it identifies the goal. So eliminate all traffic fatalities and serious injuries, and then kind of like outlines how we get there. Our plan is organized around these main sections. So we have our Vision Zero pledge. We have our engagement section where we talk about all the community engagement that we did in the process. We have a pretty extensive crash analysis section that Lucy's going to go over. Tools and strategies are kind of like best practices for what to do, like different treatments in certain situations. And then action steps is essentially our to-do list. It's our recommendations. And then the list of communities on the side, those are all the communities that are under the umbrella of this plan. And then just to talk about the engagement process that we went through, we had a 15-member advisory panel that met every few months. We had 7 community events, over 900 responses to our survey. We had an online map where people could identify hazards. It was an 18-month initiative. We had a budget of around $135,000. And I'm going to pass it over to Lucy to talk about just the crash analysis that we did.
Yeah, so there were 2 main parts to our crash analysis. The first part focused more on the types and characteristics of crashes in the region. And then the second part is what I'm going to focus on today, which is our spatial analysis. So that spatial analysis has 4 parts that you can see up on the screen here. The first is our high injury network. That's really trying to pinpoint where the worst crashes have historically happened. Then there's a high risk network, which tries to get at where crashes are likely to occur in the future by looking at different roadway attributes and how those are associated with historic crashes. Our community concerns map we created through our community engagement process and gets at where people feel unsafe traveling in the region. And then our transportation equity map gets at areas that are identified as transportation disadvantaged. And so we layered all of those maps together to get our critical safety corridors and intersections. And these are locations that we want to prioritize to have the greatest impact on reducing fatalities and severe injuries. There are 2 critical safety corridors in Scarborough and 5 intersections. So the 2 corridors are on Payne Road and Route 1. And the 5 intersections, 4 of them are along Route 1 at Pleasant Hill Road, Sawyer Road, Hages Parkway, and Old Blue Road. And then there's another intersection as well at Broad Turn Road and Burnham Road. The next part of our plan looks at tools and strategies that can be used to help reduce fatal and severe crashes. So these are proven safety countermeasures. They're evidence-based, many of them sourced from federal agencies or other similar communities who've undergone Vision Zero or adopted Vision Zero action plans. That section of the plan describes what the countermeasure is, where it can be used, how it can be most effective, and highlights relevant focus areas, like if it's an infrastructure, intersection treatment, pedestrian safety focused, et cetera. And then we go into local examples from the region. So I'm going to go through a few examples now. So you can get an idea of what it might look like in your town. So the first example is enhanced signing and pavement markings at intersections. So this can be things like oversized stop signs that light up, et cetera. And this can lead to up to a 27% reduction of fatal and severe injury crashes. That's more focused on rural intersections, but very useful in more suburban and urban spaces as well. Crosswalk visibility enhancements, so high visibility crosswalks, signs indicating that there's the presence of a crosswalk, improved lighting, can lead to up to 42% reduction in pedestrian crashes. Rectangular rapid flashing beacons, so those signs that show pedestrian crossings but actually light up, can lead to up to 47% reduction in pedestrian crashes. Pedestrian refuge islands, up to 50% reduction in pedestrian crashes. Centerline rumble strips, up to a 64% reduction in head-on fatal and severe crashes. Two-way stop to all-way stop conversions. The state of Maine had compiled some statistics around their effectiveness in Maine specifically, and that's up to a 74% reduction in injury crashes. And signalized intersection to roundabout can lead to up to 78% reduction in fatal and severe injury crashes.
So the next section of our plan is taking action, and essentially this is the action steps, our recommendations for ourselves on what to do and how to get to zero. We have, the way we've organized it is we have our programmatic support and funding objective, and then the remaining ones are kind of organized around the safe system approach elements like safer roads, safer speeds. For each page, there's a list of actions, milestones, metrics, stakeholders involved. I think in the spirit of moving things along, we won't go through all the actions, but there's about 6 pages of them, and we are currently working on many of them. Our focus, I would say, right now is on the 1 and 2. So really like getting more funding through that Safe Streets for All program, and then using that funding to implement projects on the ground in that safer road category. And so that's a good segue to talk about just some current projects that we're working on with the city. Are you guys the town? Jeez. Maybe with Metro. Okay, so we did apply for and we were awarded the round 2 of Safe Streets for All grant. So it's called the Safe System Demonstration Projects and Planning Activities Grant. Through that, we're going to do 9 demonstration projects piloting different treatments and best practices in the region. We're doing three road safety audits, a roundabout feasibility study, and 3 intersection studies. Total of the grant is around $800,000. Part of that grant is looking at the intersection of Route 1 and Sawyer Road, which is just right around the corner. And that's taking place this year. We are working with a consultant, Stantec, to do that work, looking at short, medium, and long-term improvements. The alternatives are going to be presented in May, and the deliverable will be a 30% design for the chosen alternatives in August. I'm not that familiar with this project, but I know Angela is, and another staff member in our office is. And then same thing with this next project. This is also part of that grant. It's going to look at doing a demonstration project on Route 1, kind of in that the area around Little Dolphin Drive and Down East Lane, looking at opportunities to improve the pedestrian access, potentially adding a median island, like a temporary one, crosswalks, potentially a mid-block crossing. And you can see the timeline there. We'd start planning and design in January of next year, kind of completing in October of December with reporting and assessment. Reimagining Route 1, we talked a little bit about this tonight, but we're doing this corridor study looking at the 40-mile section of Route 1 from Biddeford all the way to Freeport. Main goals there are improving the safety and infrastructure to support all modes of travel. Also looking at ways to enhance transit, looking at vehicle electrification, opportunities for additional housing and development in certain growth areas. And then the idea for that is to finish with a prioritized list of about 15 to 20 actual transportation projects that we can seek funding for. And then I did want to mention the transportation study that you all are working on. It's an update to the 2006 study. You probably know much more about it than I do. But I think that it does complement our Vision Zero work really well, because our Vision Zero work is kind of intentionally high level. And we've identified critical safety corridors and intersections, but we don't necessarily have like location specific ideas for what to do at those locations. And I think that is partly where your transportation study can really help. And I also understand you guys are looking at doing complete streets policy and plan. And I think those are also really complementary to Vision Zero in general. Just to talk through what's involved in local adoption, what it means to adopt Vision Zero Greater Portland. It would be similar to adopting a complete streets policy or setting an emissions reduction goal. It can be a really flexible approach. You could adopt the plan, adopt Vision Zero, and then choose which areas the town would like to focus on. There really is no financial commitment to adopting Vision Zero, aside from any staff resources, or some safety projects might cost additional money, but other than that, there's no extra financial commitment. You could set a stricter goal if you wanted to. So for example, we set a goal of 2045 first for getting to zero. If the town wanted to go shorter than that, you could. We have a region of 18 communities, over 300,000 people. That was part of our thought process. And then you could also conduct additional planning activities to refine the plan. So if the plan is a little too broad or high level, you can always drill down a little deeper into certain things, and you already have done a lot of that work with the transportation study. Thought I'd just share an example of what the city of Portland did recently. So Lucy and I actually presented to the city of Portland either a month or 2 months ago to their Sustainability and Transportation Committee. They made a resolution to their city council to adopt Vision Zero. And so I think their example is a really good one of adopting Vision Zero, but with a real like action-oriented approach. So their resolution is to commit to Vision Zero, kind of adopting the goal, adopting our plan as the kind of like the guiding framework for it. But then they also have directed their staff to develop a Vision Zero quick action plan is what they're calling it, with like high impact steps that they could do in the short term. They're calling for a complete streets policy update. They'll be, at this point, they're encouraging updates to the technical manual. They're looking to do a comprehensive transportation plan if they, pending funding. So that's kind of an area where you already have completed that. And then, of course, engaging community and stakeholders. And then they're requiring an annual progress report, tracking fatalities, serious injuries, what's been done. And so they approved or adopted this resolution at their meeting this past Monday. Just some final considerations for adopting Vision Zero Greater Portland. Benefits, it shows an immediate demonstration of the town's commitment to road safety. Certainly saves time and resources. You don't necessarily need to develop your own safety action plan from scratch, 18-month process, et cetera. It does enable some faster action on doing safety improvements. You can kind of skip some of the planning and get right to implementation. And then also just ensuring eligibility for funding that requires a Vision Zero action plan. So the grants that we're working on, the Safe Streets for All, the first step is to do a Vision Zero action plan, and then you're eligible to apply for other projects. So that's how we were able to get the second round, is because we had the action plan. Because Scarborough is part of our action plan, if you wanted to apply for a grant on your own with this next round, you could, provided that you adopt Vision Zero as well. Downsides, it is less tailored than a Scarborough plan. If you were to do your own Vision Zero plan, it probably would have more specific locations and detail. And then our plan would also does include elements that may be less relevant to local needs that are a little bit broader. That is it. Really appreciate the time again. Our website is visionsero.greaterportland.org, is where we have all the materials. And happy to answer any questions you might have.
So we're a little bit short on time for questions, but just for the council, this was one of our goals. Under the transportation goal was to consider supporting a Vision Zero resolution. So I know that the Transportation Committee under Angela's leadership is starting to draft something for our consideration at a future council meeting. With the transportation study being completed, I think this does provide that framework that allows us to think a little bit more about implementation around safety, which is a big piece of that plan, looking at the high crash locations and areas for improvement. And so this just kind of serves as a blueprint, I would think, in terms of how we may want to think about how we go about implementing that plan in the future.
I guess I'll just add that the council did fund our complete streets update. We have, the council adopted in 2015, I believe, our first complete streets policy. And so it's been 10 years. We have an update through GPCOG happening, as well as traffic calming policy. So we're kind of blending those together. I think the little missing piece might be that safety factor. That would be really great to kind of pull in here's a package of what the work GPCOG has done. So we're not recreating the wheel also. And I think it would blend nicely with our updates that are, to your point, the transportation study is more specific to Scarborough, our complete streets, our traffic calming, very specific to Scarborough, but really have that umbrella of the safety pieces that can get folded into those other plans.
Right. So we don't have time for much questions, so I'm just gonna let you guys kind of think about it, unless you have one question.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank GPCOG for this. This is a terrific piece of work. This advances the analysis for us way forward. And I'm thoroughly impressed. I think this kind of public safety is enormously valuable in a growing community where traffic's a big deal. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick and Lucy, for coming. We really appreciate it. All right. Yep. And we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back for our regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah, sure.
Monumental.
All right, I'm calling this meeting to order. Will you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next item is roll call. Tody, would you call the roll?
Counselor Doherty,
Here.
Counselor Cushing,
Here.
Counselor Shu,
Here.
Counselor Fellows,
Here.
Counselor Donovan,
Here.
and Vice Chair Anderson.
Here. All right, next item is item number 4, general public comment. So this is if anybody wants to comment on anything that is not on the agenda. We do have the public hearing for the budget that will come later. So this is for anything that's not on the agenda. And if you could please limit your time to 3 minutes and state your name for the record.
Hi, Stonis Moody Roberts, 38 County Road. And first of all, I just want to say to Don, thank you so much for your service. And it's really sad to lose you. And just how much I've appreciated your incisive questioning and challenging the status quo, and how important that is. Even if it's something that you might agree with, you still ask as critical a question as you can to make sure you're always challenging things. So that I've always appreciated and will miss. And also in keeping with that, I really thought your questions with this last presentation were spot on. And I just wanted to speak a little bit to that, because when I first moved to Scarborough, I drove for Uber. And it's about a decade ago, I lived down at Higgins doing the winter rental right next to Bill. And Uber, there's a huge demand. I had a lot of Scarborough riders. It's often senior citizens and often people who, for whatever reason, don't have a car or don't have their license for a short amount of time, or might be in between. The car broke down. They're trying to save up for their next car purchase. And Uber is awful. It's really exploitative. About 50% of the money that you're paying is going to Silicon Valley, investors or hedge fund managers. The drivers barely get by when you factor in the cost of car maintenance, gas, all of that. It can be enormously expensive for people who are relying on it if they hit the wrong time, and you have extravagantly increased pricing. And going back to that, this microtransit to me seems like a far more efficient and community-based system. And when you look at our property taxes, it's a very blunt instrument that is really a regressive tax, where the property tax burden is so much further on lower income and fixed income residents compared to someone who's like me, or someone who's kind of in their prime of their working career. And we've lost like our senior tax abatement program. So I do think it's incredibly important when there is an option to put a little bit of that property tax revenue back into the people who need it the most, that demographic that needs it the most, that's worth taking. And this microtransit is the opportunity to really help that demographic. Like you said, it can be possibly a social program, but more than that, it's important that this is just a trial, that it should be challenged and it should be data-based. And if it's a year-long trial, all trials, just wrap up, have their issues. And it's only when you build it, when you try it and you are scrutinous and you look at what went wrong and what went right, that you actually can build what ultimately can be hopefully a good transit program for Scarborough. So thank you.
Thank you, Stonis. Is there anyone else who would like to give public comment for something that is not on the agenda? And is there anyone online? No? And if you could just state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
All right, my name is Chris Bachmeyer, and I live here in Scarborough. I'm here on behalf of numerous people that are looking for new pickleball courts. And Is that the time
would
to do it?
Would you wait till we have the public hearing?
Oh, sure.
for
I
the
thought you
budget?
had it right
Yep.
now. Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Thank you. All right, with that, I will close public comment. Next up is the minutes from the April 2nd, 2025 Town Council meeting. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second, all right. Any discussion? No, all those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Item 6 is adjustments to the agenda. There are no adjustments to the agenda. Item 7 is items to be signed, treasurer's warrants. I signed those before the meeting. Item 8 is the town manager's report. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, or Mr. Chairman this evening, excuse me.
Call me John.
Thanks, John. A few quick items. I know we have a long agenda, so I'll move quickly. This is high budget week. The Finance Committee has committed many hours so far, and there's still more this week, but we've accomplished 8 hours of budget review so far. There's been a roundtable last evening, and there'll be an additional finance meeting this Thursday evening at the Public Safety Building. I'm very pleased with how those have gone, and very much appreciate the committee's commitment to asking very thoughtful questions, and I think we're gonna have a really good product at the end. This all sets us up for our typical adoption schedule. We do have public hearing this evening. And at this point, we're anticipating second reading on May 7th, followed by the validation vote on June 10th. Perhaps there'll be other discussions regarding the budget as we go forward this evening during the public hearing. Two big projects that I've been harping about, the Eastern Trail Close the Gap project. That was intended to be open, the bid's open tomorrow. We have decided to push that out 1 week. And that really has to do with, the good news is we've got a fair amount of bidder interest, which is always very promising. That suggests that we'll have competitive pricing, we hope. But there've been a lot of good questions, and we wanted to make sure that we'll provide thorough answers. So to that end, we've extended that 1 week. So at our next meeting, I should have those results to share. With respect to the Black Point Road reconstruction project, those bids will be open tomorrow at 2. Very anxious. As you may recall, we have a very tight timeline for that project. Essentially, the substantial completion needs to be done by June 13th. So it's really essential to get a bidder that's capable and able to mobilize quickly and move out of that project before the summer season. Just a quick report. I am part of this property tax relief or reform working group. GPCOG has convened a number of folks. I attended my first meeting last week. Very pleased to report that there's a wide array of communities, a mix of elected and appointed officials, really rich conversation, great points of view. So very pleased to be part of that effort. My suggestion was we do a fair amount of data collection. I'm going to lean on some of the resources we have among our staff to help provide some suggestions where data is lacking. But I think that it's going to be a productive group. But we also need to appreciate it's a long-term strategy. What we'll be talking about, I think we'll have some short-term components, but much of it is really talking about future legislation, some of which contemplates constitutional changes. So these are big initiatives that take years to accomplish, but we need to start somewhere. Been heavily involved, continue to be with the school building project. We continue to meet on a weekly rotation and just marvel at the amount of commitment and the expertise among pretty diverse community group. I think we have 22 or 23 community members who are religiously here for 3 to 4 hours every Monday night. They're doing the hard work, and they're reaching the point that they'll have to be providing a final recommendation. For my part, I'm heavily involved in the site selection process, and I'm anxious to get the handoff so we can really start to focus on that piece. Some of you who had been through this before appreciate that there's a mountain of work to be done once we identify a site, and I'm anxious to get going. I just want to mention, we've published our paving schedule for the year. There's a couple of holdover projects from last year. Liam, you could just scroll down and show them. We will be communicating out with residents, making you aware of this work. I won't go through all of them. We'll publish this on the website. And again, you will get notice from the town regarding our timing. You would notice a big chunk of them are Pine Point related. We often do this, the road conditions are very similar. It's most efficient to do kind of groupings of streets. And so a fair amount, I'd say, almost half of this list are Pine Point related. And for anyone that's been down there recently, it's in dire need of attention. So please, we're finally turning our attention there. Lastly, just want to update you on the June 10 ballot. So in addition to the school validation vote, I previously mentioned, but I'll go over it again this evening. This is the regular election for the Board of Education. There are 3 seats open and there are 3 candidates, Charlotte Jacobs, John Kelleher, and Jillian Trapani Huff. And then for the town council, we did have 6 candidates or nominations papers taken out by 6 individuals, 3 of whom did return them. And so on the ballot for to fill the vacancy on council is Larry Kane, Don Godsnar, he actually goes by Scott, and Cressy Maurer. And so we've been working with our vendor. We did initial proof of the ballot today, and I suspect they'll be finalized tomorrow, and we'll get those printed and available for early voting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions for Tom before Norm gives his update? Nope, right, Norm?
Thank you.
Get this up here where you guys can hear me. Good evening. March 31, we're 9 months through the year, so time for another quarterly update. And the theme tonight is on schedule and under budget. Liam, if you want to flip to the first page of the schedule, we'll start there. If we look at spending on an even basis, that 75%, we see that we're slightly ahead, but most departments are under the 75% expected spending rate that we would hope for. The exceptions are those departments that either encumber annual contracts or those spending areas that spend in a non-even spending rate. So like the county tax and the debt, those are infrequent payments. So as the calendar catches up with them, they'll normalize by the end of the year. And then the departments with large contracts like IT and Public Works, where they've got annual encumbrances, as those expenditures carry on through the fourth quarter and we convert those encumbrances to expenditures, they'll normalize. And looking at their departments, I expect them to come in under budget as well. So education is under our expected rate through this point of the year. So bottom line, under budget and on schedule. If you go to the next page, Liam, we'll look at the revenues. We're ahead on revenues, and that's typical for this time of year because we collect our taxes to installments. So we're finished with collecting our property taxes. One item in that tax category that we'll see later is excise. We're slightly below where we thought we would be. We're at about 73%, so we're not too far off our schedule. And excise tax is one of those crazy ones that tariffs and demand and new people coming into town with vehicles, and I couldn't tell you today if we're going to end up ahead or below budget with all those different inputs. So we'll just monitor it. We're in good shape on revenue. So is the school. So the areas that are below where we expect would be like community services, where childcare for summer opened April 1. So that's a fourth quarter item. We'll see that in the fourth quarter. So again, I expect those to be where we expect by the end of the year. And then if we could flip back to the fifth page, Liam, where we see the select revenues. There's the excise tax that I mentioned, and the vast majority of our other large revenue items are ahead of schedule, so we're in good shape on those items, and that's it. I'm
Great.
done.
Any questions for Norm? This no news is good news.
No news is good news. We like that.
Mr. Chairman, I failed to mention with respect to the Board of Education and council seats, the Scarborough Community Chamber will be holding a candidates night on May 13th at 6 p.m. in these chambers. Those details is kind of late breaking news, but they're mobilizing to the candidates night for all candidates.
Great. All right. So next item is order number 25-033, 7 p.m. public hearing on the proposed 2026 municipal school budget. So again, this is just a public hearing. As Tom mentioned, the next action at the council will be on May 7th for second read. The Finance Committee is actively reviewing the budget. We're meeting tomorrow to make further adjustments and recommendations to Tom, and we'll continue to work through that over the coming weeks. So this is the opportunity for the public to participate and offer their feedback on the budget. So if there are people here who would like to offer 3 minutes testimony, you can come up, line up, and start at the podium. If you just state your name for the record, and you're limited to 3 minutes, and direct your comments to the chair, that would be great. So Chris, this is your time to come on down. And if anybody else wants to comment, feel free to start to line up.
Thanks. Sorry, I was out of line. My name is Chris Bachmeyer. I live here in Scarborough, and I am I run a Facebook group, Scarborough Pickleball. It's got 1,000 members in it, and we're all really interested in pickleball here. A few years ago, we met with one of the community service persons. I think his name was Todd. In 2023, and he said that we were probably getting new pickleball courts because our pickleball courts were so overwhelmed with use. I've been using them for about 4 years, and I've got several people here that have been using them as well. What we're asking for is to give us at least a couple more pickleball courts. Almost all the different urban areas around us have pickleball courts, 4 to 6 to 8. I think there's 6 in Saco, 8 in Cape Elizabeth, Portland's got Deering Park, and we have very few. We get people from other places coming to play here because there's so few pickleball courts around. And what I think I want everybody to understand, it's not just older people that are playing pickleball. When I first started, it was people like me, and there wasn't that many young people. The last 2 years, it's exploded. It's the fastest growing sport for 18 to 45-year-olds in America right now. And it's everywhere. If you go over to Scarborough now and play in the morning, there'll be, when it gets warmer, there'll be anywhere 20, 30 of us trying to play on 2 courts over there. We try to get nets and play on the basketball courts, but the lines aren't very good and the pavement is terrible. We have to, spread out and just take turns and wait for a long time. The rec department also uses those courts during prime time around 9 o'clock, so we can't play. Last 2 years, I've been playing not with people my age, but people that are 15-year-olds I've been playing with, 30-year-olds, people in college are coming back to play. A lot of young people in grade school are playing now, and I think it's a really important intergenerational sport. Everybody plays out there too, and I think it would really help the economy here to try to get more people to play in Scarborough. What we're asking for is a couple more courts. I think they were going to be by the tennis courts. If you go by the tennis courts, they're rarely used. And I play tennis. I like tennis, but they're rarely used at this point. Pickleball is really exploding. I also want to note if we have more courts, we could hold tournaments. Tournaments bring people into town. They can usually last 2 days. We'd have a little bit of an economic benefit to have that. And I also think the high school would be using them too for the kids over there. So what we're asking for is they're low maintenance. We just need a fence. We just need a couple more courts. And I think we could really benefit the people of all ages, frankly, of Scarborough. So we're asking for those courts that we were talking about a couple years ago to happen now and not put them off to the future. It's really a big need right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Right, if you could just state your name for the record.
Brian Bosick, 18 Cloverleaf. Thank you, counselors. Good evening. So I'm a dad of 3 kids in the Scarborough school system, And personal note that I do serve as a volunteer board member with the Scarborough Soccer Club, but also with Scarborough Little League. So I just wanted to ask for your support to help close out the years of investment we've been leading to at Peterson and trying to complete the lighting for Peterson 1, the baseball field. And we're trying to do that really just to prepare the Little League for the years to come. We serve many families throughout Scarborough. There's about 300 families this year, 500 kids by the time our season is done, and boys and girls. And one of the constraints that we've had is on scheduling because our leagues are so popular. And unlike some of the towns around us, we don't have lights on our baseball fields. So that simple change, even though there is some cost in engineering and such that goes into that, really opens up our ability to schedule more practices and games and give our families what they're asking for, which is just their ability for their kids to learn the game and then not have to travel to other towns. So this season, as an example, we have to rent fields outside of Scarborough. So we'll have families heading out there to get their games in because we have just, as you see outside with the rain and the snow, a very short window of time to get our games in. So I think in the past few years, we have wonderful experience working with the town, community services, the former director, working towards this goal to get these lights in. And I think you've probably seen some of the information to the council that many people have spent close to $150,000 or a little over that over the past few years. And I think I just want to make sure that everyone understands too, it's not just from the league itself. Those funds come from our families in Scarborough, community members, and then our sponsors, local sponsors as well, and businesses. So we've all been working together towards this over the past few years to make this happen. We know budget decisions are tough and money's not unlimited, but I think considering the amount of investment that this league has made and the families have made and we continue to make year after year, we would very much appreciate the support and partnership to help finish this off. So, and I'll just leave you with some notes as I was thinking about how much community that Scarborough Little League brings together. So we have almost 50 teams this year. And when you just think about how many hours, as I was going through it today, that our families spend volunteering for those 50 teams, it's over 12,000 hours just in 6 weeks that they pull together. And that excludes everything it takes to get ready for it. And then afterwards, as we keep the fields maintained throughout the year. So that's all, but just again, thank you everyone. And like I said, it's a great experience working with the town and we really hope that we can finish this project off soon. So thank you,
Brian. Is there anyone else who would like to offer public comment on the budget?
Yes, Stansbury Roberts, 38 County Road. Sorry to come up again, but I just was kind of inspired. I think there's good spending and there's bad spending. And one of the best ways to spend is anything that brings the community together, that kind of builds our fabric. As Scarborough is growing, we're increasingly, I think, there's challenges with maintaining that small town feel. There's probably nothing more that adds to community than sports, than Little League, than your pickleball courts. So just think that's a really great use of limited budget funds and hope that that's considered. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dennis Meehan, 28 Jamico Mill Road. I'm here tonight to speak to you. I'm the current president of Scarborough Little League. And I'm here to speak tonight about the lighting proposal of Peterson. I know a lot of you have gotten some emails and we've submitted some information. But over the last 2 days, I watched the finance budget meeting, and then I went to the Brown Till the other day. So there are a few things I wanted to bring up. Obviously, Brian told you already about the 550 kids and the field problems we have. We're the largest Little League in the state, or right there with Portland. And we only have 2 fields that have mounds. So baseball fields, unfortunately, usually are single use because they have mounds in them for baseball, where softball doesn't have those things, and they're grass and dirt infields, which makes them really hard to be multi-use facilities. Portland has 5 fields with mounds to serve 20 teams. We have 2 fields with mounds to serve 19 teams right now. So it's really a crunch that we have. So a few things I want to clarify for the town. First, Scarborough Little League rents the fields from the town. We pay a bill, we have a contract with them. Part of that includes that they mow the fields, which is part of their public service, public ability in the fields anyway. But on top of that, all the maintenance of the fields beyond that falls to Scarborough Little League. So that's when you drag, rake. If anyone's ever done the process, tamping mounds, wetting them down, it takes about an hour to get a field ready to play a game and an hour afterward to put it away. And we do that every 6 days a week, multiple times. It's all done by us. And part of that, Brian was talking about the $150,000 we've done. We've put in triple batting cages, brand new dugouts, concrete for that, new playing surfaces, and all of it's been done in coordination with the town council, or sorry, with the town, former town manager, community services director. So everything that we did was aligned with his vision for how it'd work. And coming out of COVID, the fields had fallen into disarray. And we had a whole year off. We weren't using them. Nobody used them. They weren't maintained well. We've been working towards that new element with them. And all these projects we did built up to the point where last year there was a $250,000 line item in the capital improvement budget, which was to put lights at Peterson Field and also put a permanent bathroom. So Peterson's the busiest park that doesn't have a permanent bathroom situation in it. And a concession stand, that little building that's there. And it didn't make it through the final round of the budgeting last year. And we were surprised to see that it was pushed off and not included in this year's budget based on where it went. So we're really hoping that the town council will work with us to put it back in. And Little League is pledged to raise half of the money. So the lighting portion of that project is $100,000. And we're pledging that we'll raise 50,000 of that on our own privately, or anything above that 100,000 that doesn't get put in there, so that we can make this project move forward. So just so you know, I'm here today. My child will never play on these fields with lights. He's aging out, but I'm here for the future kids that will be here. And I think that we've proven that we're a good partner to the town and that we've done our part to get the facility to where it should be. And
So anyway, just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. All right, is there anyone else who would like to give public comment? We had a little technical difficulties, so we got off for a second. So we see, Bethany, that you have your hand raised, so we're going to allow you to speak. So you'll have to come off mute, Bethany, if you'd like to talk.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Bethany Mutter, and I live at 4 Lancaster Lane. And I am also here to express my support for lights at Peterson Field. I just want to be transparent that I am also a volunteer member of the Little League Board and the mother of 2 small children who are both already baseball enthusiasts. And one of the draws for us for moving here to Scarborough was access to all the athletic facilities in the town, and especially the reputation of the baseball program. I think if you ask anyone around the state of Maine, they will tell you that Scarborough is known for being a baseball town. It's just a thriving community that produces some of the best baseball players in the state. And I think, as my colleagues have, other members of the board have expressed, there's no better investment than in the children and the future of our town, and just enhancing our facilities, fixing them where we can to just continue to support the growth of our Little League, as well as creating opportunities that maybe were not available before, such as the opportunity for adults to play softball under the lights, Friday night lights. There's been a lot of interest expressed on other ways that adding lights to our baseball fields could create opportunities for adults to have softball leagues as well. And the money that could generate, as well as tournaments and other fun activities that could really offset the cost for the town in the budget. And I think as well, I just wanted to mention one last thing, that myself personally, as well as other people I know, we've all kind of dug into our pockets to try to help fund initiatives like this, because we believe they're so important as our town continues to grow. And I think any way that the town can help us funding these lights, if it's coming in and helping us meet half the cost, that would just make it that much more possible for us. So thank you very much, and I appreciate you letting me have a chance to speak.
Thank you, Bethany. Is there anyone else who would like to give public comment on the budget? We don't bite except for Tom, so feel free to come up and make comment. No? All right, with that, I'm gonna close public comment. Again, thank you everybody who came and spoke today. Moving on to order number 25-035, 7:00 PM, public hearing and second reading to consider a zoning change request for a portion of R05002, being an approximately 2.15 acre parcel located at 42 Two Rod Road, currently zoned rural farming RF to residential 2 R2, and amend the official zoning map of the town of Scarborough. So this is the public hearing portion. Is there anybody in the public who would like to offer comment on this item? All right, if you just come up to the microphone, and you have 3 minutes to speak, and if you could just state your name and direct your comments towards me, that would be great.
Thank you very much for the time to the council. It's my first time speaking here in Scarborough, though I'm a resident over at 3 Memory Lane. And myself and my partner Katie Treem, who came and spoke to you once before, she's a resident at 37 Old Neck Road. And we purchased the property at 42 Rod Road from someone. Their folks had died. It was an estate sale, and it's a little house with an ADU beside it, 2 driveways and so on. And we renovated the house and got it. It looks very nice. Our public comment, or the comment from the folks around there, have been very positive about what we've done there. We purchased it. It's in the RF zone, but the lot across the street and beside us on 3 sides is the R2 zone that we need to be able to split that lot. So we feel like it's not spot zoning. It's actually, we're kind of a cutout still in the RF with the R2 around it on 3 sides. So don't feel like it's spot zoning, and that it's beneficial to the area, particularly with the housing crisis issue. Katie participates in a statewide, she is a Realtor, and I own multiple businesses in the area and around the state. And, you know, the state says we need to build 86,000 homes in 5 years, and they need to come from somewhere. And I think Scarborough is being very cautious, and I appreciate their caution and growing in a thoughtful way and doing things the right way. There's been a lot of units, condo units, and big, huge projects built in the area. This is one small lot that I think is pretty well thought out and consistent with what's going on. And the codes enforcement, you know, with their permitting process and their support and understanding that this will be inside their normal limits for issuing permits and so on. We feel like it's consistent with goals and obviously would be helpful to our families and business in the area. So I really appreciate your time and ability to speak here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to offer comment on this item? No? All right. With that, I'm closing the public hearing portion. Moving on to the second reading. Can I get a motion, please? All right. Any discussion? No discussion? Well, I wasn't here last time, so I'm going to speak doubly. No, I'm just kidding. You know, I didn't have the opportunity to talk about this one last time. I was one of the counselors last year that didn't support this. And, you know, that was partially because, you know, at the time the council made a commitment to really, you know, take a hard stance on growth. And now in retrospect, I think this is actually good growth. This is the type of growth we want to see. This is, you know, a situation of a family trying to make, you know, something great in our community by renovating a home, potentially bringing another home there. You know, we still have our rate of growth ordinance in place to help manage the pace of growth. So this just feels like the right moment for this to move forward. So I'm going to support this tonight. So if there's no other,
Ditto.
Good. All right. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, I see that as 5-1, motion passes. Next item is, order number 25-036, public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendment, chapter 421, the Town of Scarborough authorization of outdoor services ordinance, amending the applicable time period for May 1st, 2025 through November 15th, 2025. This was at our last meeting, so I don't know if there's anything that needs to be introduced tonight.
I'm here if you need it.
No?
I don't believe so.
So this was just to, again, this was something that we do annually post-COVID where we allow for outdoor services to happen on a certain time frame. And so with this is the public hearing portion. So if there's anybody who has any comment and would like to comment on this item, you can come up to the podium or raise your hand online. No? All right, with that, I am closing the public hearing. Can I get a motion?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Nope. All right, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Next up is order number 25-039, 7:00 PM, public hearing and action on the new request for a food handler's license from Benjamin Scholl, DBA, the Main Scoop Company located at 161 Pine Point Road. Cody, would you like to introduce this one?
This is an existing business that I believe is being leased by an individual. That's Bailey's Ice Cream down on Pine Point Road. As with all new applications, we do have to come before the council for approval. The applicant is present if they have, if any of you have any questions.
Great. Is there anybody who would like to offer public comment on this item? Come up to the podium. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Ben Scholl, and I'm a local resident of Scarborough and a business owner. I have 6 children, believe it or not, all in the Scarborough school systems. And our goal is to take over the existing Bailey's. We're working with April Bailey to bring a whole new concept, more energy, something that is a bit more of a destination for families in the area, while also being very sensitive to our neighbors. Our neighbors are going to be our number one priority. We don't plan on having a big fingerprint, nothing different than what April is doing. She did a fantastic job. We just want to take things to a different level and offer a premium product, a lot of fun Maine themed sundaes and shakes, possibly even 3 smoothies if you're on the Eastern Trail and you're running and you want something a little bit more healthy. And everything from, just good quality products to, a talking tree named Twig Newton. So with a volume that's not going to bother the neighbors. So, yeah, we'd just love to be in that area and kind of bring more energy to that spot. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Will you be keeping the chocolate peanut butter cookie ice cream? Because that's gonna, okay, just making sure. Yeah. All right. Anybody else who wants to offer public comment on this item? No? All right, can I get a motion, please? All right, any discussion? Counselor Shu?
Yes, the Blue Point community is very much looking forward to this addition. My 14-year-old would like to know if you're still hiring. Just kidding, but that location for the ice cream is great. Looking forward to having you there.
Great. Any?
I don't think the gentleman got the message that samples are always appreciated.
Yeah, next time. All right, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Yeah, especially if you're coming for pizza or anything, like samples help. Next is we're moving on to old business, order number 25-037. Second reading to approve the expenditure in an amount not to exceed $260,000 from the Land Acquisition Reserve Fund for the purpose of purchasing property located at 49 Grant Road, identified by the Scarborough Tax Assessor's map R029 lot 007 as recommended by the Parks and Conservation Land Board, and authorize the town manager to execute any and all documents as are necessary to protect the town's interest. Jessica, would you like to say a few words to set this up?
Yes, Jessica Sargent, 221 Beach Ridge Road, Chair of the Parks and Conservation Land Board. Wanted to thank you for your support for the easement. You already heard my spiel 2 weeks ago, so I won't go into it any more, but I wanted to make myself available if you had any questions.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, with that, is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, I'm seeing nobody in the room or online. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? No discussion? All right, well, this was pretty well discussed last time. I wasn't here. I did my thumbs up online, but I just want to say I really support this. I think it's a great addition to our conservation space, that it abuts a current property, and that the conservation value that it brings, despite maybe not having public access, I think is well worth it for our community. So thank you for bringing this forward. All right, all those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, next is order number 25-040. First reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 302, the Town Council Rules and Policies Manual. So this is being brought forward by the Rules and Policies Committee. Corey, do you want to set it up?
Yes, just very quickly, this is a simple kind of administrative change to our agenda. We discussed this at our Rules and Policies Committee last week and voted to recommend moving the standing special committee reports and liaison reports from item 10 up to the front portion of the agenda for greater public visibility.
Great. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, I'm seeing none. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All right, any discussion? No? I didn't do it tonight because I knew it was on the agenda, so I'm gonna wait until it's official.
Yeah, just for clarity, there is a second component. I just want to make sure that everyone appreciates that. Do you want to speak to her? Liam could.
So the one other portion to section 118 just moves the internal deadline for materials for council meetings. So it just kind of recognizes that we now largely work a 4-day work week open to the public. So it just moves that timeline back one day in line with that. So really more administrative, but just want to bring some awareness to it.
Great, thank you, Liam.
I'm nothing if not consistent because I made the same omission during the committee meeting. Thank you for that,
We
for
know,
catching that.
we know which one you think is
Yeah,
important. so.
Right, thank you.
All right, this is on the floor, so is there any discussion? I'm seeing none. All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Next is order number 25-041. Act on the request to accept the open space master plan as presented to the town council on March 5th, 2025 with amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to shorten this. We are so excited to bring this before you tonight. This is our request to formally act on the open space. We did add one amendment that had to do with Councilor Cushing's comments about the developable land that's available, and we added that in. We also have an interactive portion of this part of the presentation if you all decide to act on this. But before we get to that, I did want to thank our committee and acknowledge Jamie Fitch's efforts. She is out sick today and we're missing her, but Angela and I are holding down the fort for her. But I just wanted to acknowledge her efforts and her project management throughout this. I also, for the display that's been created, I wanted to do a shout out to Jill Darian in Community Services for her excellent design work, and then Tom Bernier in Public Works for his excellent execution of our vision. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions about this that you might have.
Counselor Cushing?
Yeah, what page is my stuff on?
It is on page 28 at the bottom.
Great. Any other questions for Autumn? No? Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, I'm seeing no public comments. Can I get a motion? And a second?
Okay.
All right, any discussion? Counselor Shoup?
Yeah, I just want to thank the staff and all the volunteers that all the time that they put into this. It took a lot of time, a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions, and I think we're all very happy with the plan that we have, and we're really looking forward to moving forward with it.
Great, Counselor Cushing?
No, other than thank you for putting that in there. It's an important element. Thanks.
Any other comments? No, I just want to also thank Counselor Shoup for all of your commitment and time that you've also spent on this. I know you've been a big champion for a lot of the work related to conservation, open space. So thank you for your leadership and for being a part of this. And I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, it coming to life as we go forward and achieve our goal. When do we get to like the fun part?
Now.
Now?
Yes.
Okay. So before we vote, or do we vote first or?
Vote first.
Okay,
and- yeah.
so all those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Now, before we get to the next item, do we want to do the fun
Yeah,
part?
if you'll indulge us, we'd like to unveil, it's really something that's been talked about in these chambers for probably starting a year ago. Really upon adoption of the 30 by 30 goal, there was, I think, genuine interest in measuring that goal and kind of appreciating it as we move forward. Tonight seemed like a very good time to unveil the barometer or what we're using to measure that our success. Also, certainly very fitting having just adopted our newest addition to conservation. So without further ado, we'd invite you back to the back of the chambers and we'll unveil it and perhaps a picture.
Okay. Somebody gonna do a drum roll?
Sorry, ready? Percent of 100, so we're accurate. We also have the honors for Sandon for the bronze 130 acres that we just.
I think we should let Karen. Yeah, Karen, it's yours. Okay.
And Angela and I have determined that it's not extremely scientific, we'll fix it at night when no one's watching.
She's persuasive enough that.
Getting scored to say that, I've been kind of feeling and getting, okay.
Yeah.
I call it a big speech thing.
Oh, yeah. Steve. Oh, that's great. They did great. Yeah, but this is kind of a plasma cutter, CNC machine. Tom is a incredible fabricator. He does all of it. Yeah, not that great. Yes. That's true. Great. Nicely done. Check the rating of the floor.
Good. All right, next is order number 25-042. Act on the request from the Scarborough Land Trust to authorize the town manager to sign a letter of support to the Land for Maine's Future to acquire and conserve Beech Ridge Preserve. Tom, would you like to set this one up?
Yes, this item, this is a matter that came before the council back in June of '24. Council approved $800,000 toward this purchase. This is a purchase that's much larger than that. There were a number of different components, including a sizable grant from the Land for Maine's Future program. Historically, I provided letters of support right along, consistent with council action. This time, the Land for Maine's Future really wanted to make sure the legislative body authorizes me to do that. So that's really what this action is about, so I can send a letter of support.
Great. Are there any questions for Tom? No, is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, I'm seeing none. Can I get a motion, please? All right, any discussion?
Support this.
Great. I'm seeing none. All right, all those in favor?
Thank you.
It's unanimous. All right. Next up is item number 9, non-action items. We do not have any. Item 10, standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. Why don't we start on this end tonight? Scott, is there anything you need to update on committee reports?
Yeah, just on what we voted on tonight about changing the agenda on that, and Harbor Committee, I missed again. I'll get a routine eventually. It takes me a while, but I'll get it.
Great.
Thank you.
Councilor Cushing?
Communications Committee will meet tomorrow, so stay tuned.
All right, Councilor Shoup?
None of my committees have met since our last meeting, but I will remind everyone that we have our ordinance committee meeting coming up next month where we will be taking up the animal control ordinance.
Great. All right, on the finance committee side, we've met over the past 2 days to look at all of the sorry, that beeping just threw me off. We met to look at the budget for all of the departments, including the school. It was a really good conversation. There's some item and motions on the school side that they shared with us that's going to impact the budget request on their end. So they're impacted by having more kindergarten incoming students who require special services. They also got their health benefits, which was higher than they had anticipated. Luckily not as high as other communities, but they were estimating 8% for their healthcare rates, and it was 10%, whereas some communities went up as high as 14%. So that's impacted the budget. We had a really good conversation on positions that were not included in the budget, and we've asked Tom to look at what it would take to include the 8 firefighter positions that were requested that would really enable us to have a 3rd ambulance in town. We did a pilot this past year. It looked really great, the results, and, we haven't added a third ambulance in 25 years. So with the growth of our population, now might be the time to do that. And then we also asked him to look into the public safety positions that were proposed but not included in the budget. And so he's gonna look into that as well. Tomorrow, we're looking at the CIP and then also discussing, direction to give Tom over the next 2 weeks to come back to the Finance Committee with potential different recommendations that we can assess and bring that back to council for our second read. So that's the big part. Finance has been meeting a lot. We're gonna meet tomorrow, 4 days in a row. So lucky us. Corey?
Thank you. As mentioned, Rules and Policy met last week. In addition to the Chapter 302 amendments that we voted for earlier this evening, there was some preliminary kind of introductory discussions around committee expectations from the council perspective, as well as the restart of a discussion around a potential facilities naming policy, which will obviously be relevant if and when we get new school building or buildings approved, among other future facilities. Long-range planning met on Friday. They referred proposed short-term rental regulation language to the ordinance committee. They voted 3-2 after a great deal of discussion to pass that along without comment, without an opinion one way or the other. So that'll be coming to us on ordinance. They also, they voted unanimously not to consider ordinance language, which would enable indoor firing ranges in town. So planning board meets, excuse me, planning board meets on Tuesday with the holiday on the 22nd at 6:30. They've got a very hefty agenda. One of the longest agendas I've ever seen, to be honest, which includes discussion of the proposed contract zone for the Marshview project. Thank you.
Great. Councilor Donovan?
Tom reported on the SBAC, the School Board Advisory Committee #2 report. So I won't go into it, but they met on April 14th. A lengthy executive committee on sites. Confidentiality is involved here, so I'll not comment that, but I will tell the audience that we seem to be making real progress in advancing this issue. And the committee itself, which is large, is very deliberative, very engaged. The chair, Charlie Peters, is really doing an excellent job and should be commended for the perseverance. It just, to go week after week and month after month is not easy. And he's done a terrific job. On track for a June vote to send it to the Board of Education. Housing Alliance met on April 9th, preparing for a workshop with the town council for, I think, May 7th. Very much an open discussion of what the needs and proposed actions are. It's likely to be an educational process for the town council, the session on May 7th. And some data is obviously going to be collected and reported on. And I think those are my committees.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So next item is councilor member comments. Does anybody have any comments that they would like to make?
Just one.
Councilor Cushing? Yep.
Amazing. Look at the clock.
I know.
Just amazing.
know, right?
You get the prize.
I get the prize.
Thank you.
So Councilor Scyther, if you're watching and you want tips, you know where to find me. All right. With that, any other comments? Councilor Donovan?
Yeah, I mean, we've all had a number of communications sent to us by people who supported this initiative to put lights at the Little League field at Peterson Park. I strongly support this. This is a need. The Little League people have stepped up. It's a substantial cost, capital cost, and they are ready to absorb half of it. And so I hope I'll be more than ready to write a check when the time comes. This is well presented, and I look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I just really want to echo and thank anybody who comes to give public comment, especially on the budget, because this is your budget, not our budget, but the community's budget. So hearing from people, it's been, I think the past 2 years, we've not had anybody show up at our public hearing for the budget, or maybe one person did. And so just to see a few people tonight is great because it helps us, really kind of listen and hear what the community's looking for. So thank you for coming.
And I will comment on the pickleball support people. Absolutely true. Just waiting in line to get onto the courts. I go to Memorial Park often, just as a place to get a good walk in, and I see it all the time. So there's a real need there. So I would strongly encourage the council to support those two.
Right. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead.
Piggybacking on the budget theme, this has been interesting for me. It's my first go around. I'm not on the finance committee, so I'm not doing all the heavy lifting that you all are. But it's been interesting for me to see. I wasn't quite sure what to expect as we entered into this process and into this season. But I've really been struck by the outreach by email and otherwise around things that folks want. And it was mentioned earlier that there really is, there's a strong community spirit. I think there's a real desire for people to be able to gather and do things in public spaces. And I think we should support that as much as we can. We hear so much about stop spending, and I totally respect and appreciate that. And, we all just recently made our property tax payments, and that's never a fun day. But I think at the same time, it's good to be reminded that we're also, we have a responsibility to provide services. So I'll be interested to hear how the rest of this process plays out, but it's been interesting. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments? No? All right, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn? A second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Unanimous. All right, thank you, everybody.